Hello everyone, I'm Johnny Mack here on the Steve Ballance Show. We have our first edition here with Coach Ballance.
What's up, Johnny? How are you doing today?
Good.
Good to see you.
You too.
Sorry, I'm a couple minutes behind, just getting from a lesson.
Yeah, that's alright. So today we got just some frequently asked questions from parents. So we'll just start off here, pretty simple. How did digging start?
Well, that's a great question. You know, we get that question a lot, so I'm not surprised that you have this. So it goes back almost 7 years now, about 6.5. Coach Frazier and I got together. It was actually Coach Frazier asking me, would we do this together? And at the time, I wasn't quite sure. I thought I was going to be going to a different college, you know, coaching at a different university or junior college at the time. And to make a long story short, we talked about it. I decided to not take a particular job in New Jersey, and then Coach Frazier and I put it together. You know, on my way back from that, I was going to rescind my opportunity to coach at this college, and then we just got together, and the rest is history.
So, like, along with that, where did the actual name digging come up, and like the colors that you chose for it?
That's another interesting story. You know, a question that we get asked a lot. That's actually a really quick answer. So, Coach Frazier and I are sitting together having a meal in the early goings, obviously before we had a name, and I came to the table with 10. I came with a sheet of paper that had 10 names on it, and like 6 or so of them were just terrible, bad names. I just kind of wanted to see where his head was. And I put this piece of paper across the table, and right away he's just like getting rid of names. But in my mind, it was actually Dig In Baseball. I thought that was like one of the best names. Some of the better names I don't even really remember. And then as we're sitting across the table and he's looking at him, he's crossing off the names that aren't very good. He circles Dig In Baseball. And I could see that from the mirror image reverse. And I just said, that was great. And he goes, Dig In Baseball. I said, that was the one I liked, and that was my favorite one. And that whole process took like 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm. So what about the orange and blue there as well?
Orange and blue is interesting. You know, Coach Frazier had come to from some things that had blue and white in it. I came from some things that had blue and white. My high school team, when I was a high school player, had blue and white. So we really wanted blue in the color scheme. We knew we were going to have white in there at some point, but as like a third color. And to be honest with you, you know, the way the orange came was, you know, at a previous time when I had like a nonprofit in the Baltimore area, my father used to be the vice president, and when he was still alive, we always said if we ever did something new again, we should bring orange into the equation. And then I said, if I ever get an opportunity, I'll consider that. And it was an opportunity, and I thought it was a way to kind of honor him and thank him. And I said that little story with some other stuff with Coach Frazier, and he liked it, and we went with the orange. It was that simple.
Nice. So I know a few years ago you were on ESPN, so how much did you really enjoy that experience?
You know, that was a lot of fun. I get joked around with the people that know me because I got to meet, you know, over the earpiece or whatnot you want to call it with Bob Lee, but that was like one of the highlights. I really enjoyed talking with Bob Lee. I really respected him as a journalist and his professionalism, and we got to talk probably for 5 or 10 minutes, like behind, you know, off the camera, excuse me. And it was a really cool experience. The way that they did it, the questions, ESPN, it was a great experience. I really enjoy it. I get asked that an awful lot about things, but that was such a great time, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, that seems pretty interesting.
It was fun.
So other experiences like that, how much do you enjoy speaking at like the National High School Coaching Convention?
That's been fun. Since I've been back from a college coach back to high school, I've had the opportunity now to speak at a few of the national conventions. I'll have a chance again in 2017, I should say, this year, as it gets into December in Arizona at the high school coaches convention. And I really enjoyed doing it a couple years ago in St. Louis. I enjoy going to that every year. Just to have a chance to speak at something at that magnitude in front of all the high school coaches that are there is an unbelievable honor to be able to do that. I don't mind speaking in front of large groups, and that's really been a highlight of coaching, is being asked to do that, you know, again at that type of venue in those locations in front of a lot of great coaches from across the country.
Nice. So some other parent questions is they ask, how can my son make a dig-in team, and how do you differentiate from like the A and B teams?
Yeah, big thing is a lot of the ways our guys make a dig-in team is they come to one of the tryouts that we have at one of the various age groups. Another way is a lot of times myself or Coach Frazier, you might talk to somebody somewhere along the line. We get a lead from another player or parent or something, in that regard. But those are the different ways. Usually it's like word of mouth. If you see a player out there, one of our coaches sees somebody, or a tryout are usually the ways guys would make the team. I guess, did you ask like what are some of the characteristics of
Yeah.
that? Basically we're looking for kids that, regardless of the age, they have some kind of passion for the game of baseball. They like the game of baseball. They want to learn. There's a level of seriousness. If you look at a lot of our players throughout our program, from currently like as young as like maybe 10, 11 years old, all the way up to the oldest guys, some of the characteristics are that the players are very serious. They have a love for the game. They, for the most part, work hard, have a strong work ethic. They want to get better. They want to be pushed by fellow players and their coaches and things like that. You can kind of see a certain characteristic that a lot of them have. As far as your second part, we talk about differentiating between the teams, what they would play on. A lot of people label it, the A, B type thing. That's something that we don't label. We have some age groups that have some really good teams where there's multiple teams in it. But a lot of it ends up being, sometimes you have a guy on the higher end team, so to speak, as people would say. They might have a difference of work ethic. They have a little bit more of a desire. Some of them have a little bit more of a commitment. You have some of the different levels of ability and where they are in their maturation process of how they conduct themselves. Some of it is some different teams based off of your grades, meaning we have a lot of high academic performers in the program. There is a lot of factors that determine it. But I think the easiest thing that we do get from parents is like, oh, that's the A team, that's the B team. That's not something that we're putting, like I said, a label on. It just comes down to different factors when they see it. I think some people say, oh, that team wins a little bit more, or whatever the case may be. But there's just a lot of factors.
Mm-hmm. So when you talk about like the tryout process, what are like some signs of players who want to play in high school, or who can play in high school and who can play in college?
Yeah, when you have guys at the tryout process, it's a snapshot, right? So you really can't always see that type of thing, high school, college at a tryout. You can get some kind of ideas or just a flash, but when you look at it, you have a lot of players that come through here. Aspirations are obviously high school, and then you have a lot of guys that are ambitious and they want to be collegiate players. But I think some of the things that you see. A big thing is work ethic. A lot of players, unfortunately, do not know what it takes to be a high performer at a lot of quality high school baseball programs or go to college. A lot of them think they have a strong work ethic, but they really need that work ethic developed. Somebody that could tell them what it takes. Baseball is a sport of doing, right? You have to participate actively in the process to get better. I mean, that's just the way that it works. But when you look at high school guys, you see what high school guys do, and they go through, and then to be in college, it's a whole nother level. And usually you start seeing a lot of that sophomore year in high school. You start seeing guys willing to take that to the next level of their work ethic. But work ethic is so huge. Yes, you have to have ability. Yes, you have to have talent. But you have to have some type of drive when it comes to baseball to have a lot of your skills come out.
So even a step up from that, is there anything specific characteristics of someone who may go pro?
I've had, I think it's up to like 86 guys now that I've coached in the last 17 years that have played professionally, and only one big leaguer at this point. And a lot of those guys, as I think back in my mind right off the top of my head, they had some of the same characteristics, and it goes, again, back to a strong work ethic. Some of these guys that I remember that made it, they were some of the first guys to show up to practice every day. They were some of the last guys to leave. They were the guys that were getting extra work. And it has none of that was like, oh, this guy was 6'4" and this guy was 5'2", or all these different things. It was something just as simple as that for some of these guys that played professional. Some of them had a demeanor about them that was just different than other guys. Some of them were just, some of the most clutch things, and some of them were guys that you would have possibly at a certain point say, oh, if you had to ask, did that guy go professional or whatnot? You know what I mean? You would never guess. But a lot of them had some of the same characteristics of that work ethic and that drive that just wasn't, I would say, it was extraordinary,
Mm. So, what could you tell parents about when they're sending their kids to high school, whether if it's a public or private school, and what's the real difference, and any advice you have on that?
Yeah, that is something that you're really hitting a lot of questions that we get a lot from the parents in our digging community. Myself and Coach Frazier, in the middle school age, particularly when guys are going into seventh and going into eighth, we have a lot of guys in our area who are really, them and their families are really trying to figure out, do I go to my home public high school or do I go to private school? And they have a lot of questions, and we try to spend as much time as we can with people to kind of help them from our opinion. I think there are pros to both situations, going to public and going to private. I think the questions that we get are going to be, how much different is this public situation than our private? And a lot of times we know the situation of the schools that they're looking at for private and or where their home school would be, just knowing the community, knowing the area, the state, taking pride in knowing that really well by myself and Coach Frazier. But I think that, a lot of it comes down to, where are they socially? Where are they academically? Where does their baseball skills fit in? Are they going to be in a situation where they can thrive in all three of those areas? Are they going to be in a situation where one's going to help them a lot more than others? But it's very unique to each family, and for us, it's a very individual situation. A lot of times when we're getting asked these questions, we know the player, we know some of the parents, we know what some of their ambitions are, what they're trying to do, but it's a very individualistic thing. And it's a very tough decision for a lot of these families to make when you talk about the financial part of it, talk about some of the friendships and different things that go along the way. But that is a question that we get asked a lot, and there are so many factors in making that decision. And we're just glad to play a small part in helping them along the way.
So, I know the camps are a big hit in the summer, and I was just wondering, what are like the age groups, what really goes on at camp?
Yeah, the camps are just so much fun. I'm just sitting here thinking about some of the camps that we've already had this summer and in the past, and so much fun. But the ages are six, 5.5 sometimes, but basically 6 years old to around 14. We don't do a lot in the high school age. We do a lot in the elementary, middle school age. We find that that's the best way to do it. Guys have fun. They learn a lot. But, yeah, that's just so much fun. Just great. Love them.
So, along with that, a lot of lessons go on here at the facility. What are the age groups for that, and what's like the focus during each lesson?
Very similar. Usually lessons, I don't think we work with anybody that's lower than 6 years old, but we go from 6 years old all the way up to, I think there's people in like their early 30s that are in here doing lessons. That are usually guys that are still, humming around professional baseball or what have you. But the lessons are a great opportunity to be an extension of teams' practices, whether they're inside or digging or outside. You have guys that play for all kinds of different organizations. Remember, we have kids that come up from North Carolina once in a while for lessons, West Virginia. You get guys that are not just Maryland that comes for a couple times a year or whatever the case may be is. But you really find some guys that develop different work ethics when they start seeing an extension of those things, of practicing games. And lessons are just, we really enjoy lessons. There are a lot of great instructors. And we just, lessons are just another facet of what we can offer, to the baseball community.
Gotcha. So again, with like the age groups, some parents are curious like when their son's age group like moves up to like the next year.
Get that a lot. September 1st.
Gotcha. So these last few are from like a kind of like a coaching management perspective.
Okay.
So. Like what determines when you like move a guy into like a different position on the field?
Yeah, those are obviously delicate situations because you get into the emotion of things, you get into the different factors. A lot of it is depending on how old they are. What you might look at a 10-year-old might be looked at differently when the kid's 14 or 16 in some cases. But a lot of it is a projection when you look at how their body type is, how their body movements and things like that. You get so many guys that come through the program. For example, our program are teams that are like, I'm a middle infielder, I'm a shortstop, or I'm a second baseman. And for whatever reason, glamorous positions or whatnot, but there's only so many guys that can play shortstop or second base. And a lot of it is just how does your body flow. I think with our practices, as you've heard me say before, but I'll say it again, our practices are second to none. The practices that we put out there are as good, if not better than anybody, especially in Maryland. And you start seeing how guys' bodies' movements are going on, what they're learning, how their arm strength is developing, where did they come from. There's, again, like some of these other questions, there's a lot of factors. But you start putting players in a situation where they can individually succeed, right? Because, we're all about the individual that comes into the team, as a team concept. But you see guys that they profile as a third baseman only or whatnot, and you're going to put them there, or they're first. Or we can go on and all over the diamond. But a lot of it is projections and what you see, and just having knowledgeable baseball people that know what's going on that can put them in a situation. If you can play outfield, you should be able to play everywhere in the outfield. Are you lefty? Are you righty? What's your age at that time? But it's such a delicate situation because everybody has their idea of what they want to do, and what we're trying to do is what's best for the player, first and foremost.
So it seems like another delicate situation is like, how can someone's kid move into like a good, secure spot in the batting lineup, like based off their performance?
It's interesting that you say that, because that's a question that I know Coach Frazier talks about a lot. That he gets a lot of people ask him that question. I don't hear that question as much, but I do hear it. But I know that's a topic of conversation that we get. How do I go from the 8-hole to batting 2? And I guess a lot of times it depends on the age. I'm kind of old school in the regard where I believe if you're in the batting lineup, that's a good thing. If you're one of the guys on the field, or you're one of the guys that get an opportunity to hit today, that's a positive. But you get a lot of I don't know if it's always the players. Sometimes it might be from more of a parental unit where they want to see their son a little bit higher. But the bottom line is you have to be able to produce. You have to be able to have your spot in the lineup. Sometimes you're not always in the same spot. Sometimes floats. What's the pitching matchup? What's the team matchup? What kind of thing are we doing here versus some league play, tournaments type things? It's all relative, because of different ages. But a lot of it is got to be consistent. You got to fit the mold of what that coach needs at that situation. I prefer sometimes, if the situation calls, I like to have a left-handed hitter in the 5-hole or the 7-hole, for example. There's no rhyme or reason to that. You just not force feed it. But if you have a lefty in the 5-hole or 7-hole, I like that kind of integrity that it gives to the lineup. Some guys like more speed in certain locations versus whatever. But a lot of it is just the player. What's, again, going to put him to be successful. If he's better suited for a 7-hole, sometimes as a coach you can see that a guy needs to be a little bit lower in the lineup because he can handle that spot. He has more anxiety. He puts too much pressure on himself as he bats 2 or 3 or something like that. So, again, it comes down to what is best for that individual player on that team at those times. And just because you go up to down doesn't mean you're not as good. And just because you go from down to up doesn't necessarily mean all of a sudden you're a future first-round pick. There's a lot of factors. Again, I've said that like a broken record, but there's a lot of factors behind it. But a lot of it is if you're consistent and you're doing well, things will take care of themselves.
So if you got some more time here,
Sure.
we got some questions that you get from players pretty often.
Oh, yeah, this is cool.
Yeah,
Sure.
So first one here, do you ever coach without your sunglasses on?
I wonder when that was asked, actually. But, yeah, if it's nighttime, if it's a night game, I'll have my glasses on. Or if there's really no sun out or whatever, I guess I'll have these on as well. But, yeah, I would say 90% of the time I'll probably have my sunglasses on. So that's a funny question.
Yeah, another one. Why do you only use precise V7 and V5 pens?
Oh, so talking about this right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been using these pens. That's so funny. These are great. I've probably been using these pens for like the last 10, 12 years. It's kind of funny. I'll go to Staples or what have you, and I'll buy them out, whatever they got at that moment. So I never, in case they change the pen on me. I just like the way it feels. I like the way that the clip fits if I have to have it on my hat, in my lineup card, or whatnot. I just love the pen. I very rarely use any other pen for anything. That's a great question.
So what was your favorite position as a player?
Hands down catcher. I was fortunate enough growing up to play all the positions on the field, have success at all different positions. Just had a strong passion for baseball at a young age. But I would say when I hit about 12 years old, I just really started loving the catching position. I was fortunate enough to play on a lot of high-level teams where I got to do a lot of catching. I wish I could have caught more in high school than I did, but because of my high school situation where they needed me to play other positions, I didn't get a chance to catch as much as I would have liked to. But there's just something that the catcher position did for me as a player that no other position gave me. You're in the action on every pitch. It was such a pivotal spot to be able to control the game from behind the plate with the pitch calling or the presentation of the pitches, what some people will call framing, to just the overall energy that the catching position can provide you, throwing out runners. Every good team has a strong catcher, and I just love that position so much.
So as a player, what would you say what your favorite moment was, and then also as a coach?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I would say one of my favorite moments as a player that come to my mind was when I was 16. I was playing for a team that wasn't my normal team, and we were playing in a summer qualifying event at the end of the season through the league to get to Cocoa Beach, Florida, at the what used to be the Expos training facility. And I remember coming up, bottom of the seventh, 2 outs, bases loaded, and I think it was a 2-1 count. And the tying run was at second, and the winning runner was at first. And I just remember getting a fastball middle in and just getting the barrel out and getting a good swing on it, hitting it deep down the left field line. And not for a ground rule double, but for a double. And by the time the left fielder picks it up and throws it in the shortstop, the guy that was at first is rounding third. They're not going to have a play. He doesn't even throw it. And then we score, win the game. We're going to Cocoa Beach, and then just everyone just runs out on the field towards second base. That was a great moment as a player. That's probably the first thing that comes to my mind of a really, really significant moment. And that was it was my junior summer. And honestly, what's crazy about it is, I got so many looks when we went to that national championship from colleges at that tournament that if we don't get there, I don't know if I would have got some of those same looks for college, to be honest. And then as a coach, I've been very, very blessed as a coach to be around other good coaches, other good players. And I would say being at the national championships in Mississippi 3 straight years, when I had my Baltimore Waves organization, to be state champions 3 years in a row for that, and to go to the World Series. Those were some great times. Some of the coaches that are with us here at Dig In were former players on that team at one time. But I would have to say, I would be remiss not to say, probably my best moment was when I was coaching at Anne Arundel Community College and we beat Cecil College late in the regular season to secure the Maryland State Championship for junior colleges. And that was the best cooler bath I've ever gotten. That was a great feeling. And I think when me and a second baseman of ours used to always do, you jump up and kind of do the I don't know what you call them, the chest slams or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever got higher off the ground since maybe I was 16 playing basketball. So that was a great moment.
Uh-huh. So since you said you've been blessed since you have been coaching, how many games do you think you've coached in your whole career?
I think some people look at me and they say, oh man, this guy's young. And some other people probably look at me and say, this guy's getting old. He's been doing this a while. But I would say this is going into my 17th year coaching, and it's well into the thousands. I mean, I've coached basically year-round since I was 19 years old, 18 years old when I got hurt in college and couldn't play anymore. And you figure, you're doing all the high school games, all the college games, all the fall games, all the summer. I mean, I don't even know exactly where that number is, but it's a lot of numbers. I don't know. I think I'm very fortunate that there's not too many guys anywhere near my age that's coached as many games as I've coached in. So I wish I could give you an accurate number, but I'd be guessing. But it's way, way in the thousands, way, way up there.
All right, so last question here. Some of the players are curious why you don't give out too many compliments at practice and games.
That's a good one. Oh man, I wonder if that's your question as a former player. I do hear some scuttle about that sometimes. It's real simple. I mean, guys that are coach around or players, that I feel like it happens all the time. I think I make that comment a lot of times at practice, that's why I don't give out compliments. But the main thing is I find that a lot of times that, from my experience, you give a guy a compliment or a true attaboy, and then they do something immediately right after that's kind of you wish that they wouldn't have done. But it's really that simple. You just try to keep them at a high level all the time. But I think I'm very fair with the guys. If they do something good, I'm going to tell them. If they do something negative, I'm going to tell them as well. But that is a running joke kind of thing. So I'm going to give you credit for that question and say that was for you.
All right. Well, that's all we have. Anything you'd like to say to close it out here?
Yeah, it was good having this, first edition with you. I really enjoyed the questions from the parents and some of the things from the players. And, I'll just leave it that, I just thank everybody for their help in building Dig In to where it is in these almost 6 years.